So today we've got the wonderful Caroline who is joining us. If you would like to just introduce yourself for us, Caroline, tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is you do.
Absolutely. Hello, I'm so excited to be here. I'm Caroline Dunne, and I'm a personal trainer, nutrition coach, and yoga teacher. And my main message, my mission, is to help people find strength in mind, body, and spirit. And that encompasses long-lasting food freedom and body confidence. So I'm really into it's not just a set of squats, it's about the whole person. And I do coaching and classes as part of that. So really excited to delve into that, tell you more about that today.
Excellent. So tell us a little bit about kind of like your background. How did your journey lead you to where you are now?
So people are always quite surprised when I say this, that actually I really didn't like exercise as a child, because I was a personal trainer first. Like that was kind of like my main thing. So I hated sports, and the only thing that I was pretty much interested in was dancing. And my journey kind of began at university with this. I'd just gone through a bad breakup, which I'm sure we've probably all been there before. You feel a little bit destroyed, don't you? And running for me came at just the right time. It was getting outside into the fresh air, that joyful movement, the therapeutic kind of pattern of your feet on the pavement. And so that was actually my journey into exercise. And from there, it was a slow burner. So I then came to weightlifting probably 5 years ago now. That was a whole nother story, and it changed a lot in my mindset. I think I struggled to make things consistent. And I know a lot of people are in that same boat. You know, exercise and health and wellness it almost feels like a bit of a luxury. You'll do it when you've got the time, when you've got the energy. But for me, about 5 years ago, the weightlifting utterly changed kind of my level of experience, and that's what fired me up to take this into my career, to do the personal training, and then to do the yoga teaching, and then to add on the nutrition coaching. And I can go into that if you want, kind of like that little change that happened for me.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, because there's so many people that are listening to this, and we have a lot of ladies listening to this as well that might still be under that illusion that weightlifting is really just for guys and it's quite intimidating. And I know that's definitely changing, that mindset, just generally speaking. But it's such a game changer, not only just through consistency and attitude around health, but in terms of results as well, and how essential it is. So I'd love for you to share that, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, my initial ideas about weightlifting, I used to tell this to my husband and he laughs about it now, was that weightlifting was repetitive and boring. And why would I want to do that? But he was actually into it way before me. So he was actually the person who made it less intimidating. He was able to show me the gym and what the different bits of kit did. I have to say that's really helpful. Having a guide initially to break down that scary environment is amazing. And as I started to do it, the mindset shift is what changed my level of experience, changed my mindset, and made it therefore something that I could stick with and be consistent. And that was, and obviously this is done with the hindsight of years now. So it wasn't that I walked in like, oh, I'm changing my mindset. This realization came later on. But you may not know, I'm quite a small human. So I'm 5'2", and I'm quite little. And therefore most people are taller than me. I used to find not just the gym environment intimidating, but to be honest, like most social situations, being faced with a wall of humans who are larger than you, like my reaction was, I'm small and insignificant. And for me, therefore, weightlifting started to become a way to redefine that. So it started to actually be not that I'm small and insignificant, but I'm strong. And it didn't really matter like my strength relative to someone else. So it wasn't a matter of how much was on the bar or anything like that, but it was actually the case of, I can pick this up, I'm strong. I can pick up more next week, I'm stronger. And that gave me this confidence, and that became identity. And that's the key point for me about how to make something consistent in your life. When it's part of your identity, I was investing in that. I was turning up to the gym to be, I am stronger. not because working out is good for me.
I love that. That's so relative. Like not just in health and wellness, but just in general in life. How we identify with ourselves is how we show up. Where and in reality, no matter what front you try and put on, if you genuinely believe your identity is small and insignificant, to use your example, that's kind of how you're going to show up in some way, no matter how hard you try. So I really appreciate you sharing that, because that's usually one of the first places that most people need to look when it comes to any kind of change they want to make in their life, is how are they identifying with where they are now, and how does that identity need to shift to close the gap to where they actually want to be. How long did it take you to almost start to have that complete shift, or is that still ongoing?
I mean, I think obviously it's still ongoing, but actually probably still years, because it's a journey, isn't it? And I was learning along the way, and I think my personal journey now probably represents a lot of what my clients go through. So I probably started on engaging on just well, it's a set of squats, great, I'm feeling stronger. This idea of almost things fit in parcels. I can figure out my nutrition, I can figure out my exercise. And then actually you start to find surprising connections, and like emotionally surprising connections, that mean that it starts to become a lot more complicated in a great way, like a lot more shades of gray, as opposed to just black and white set of squats and then eat a salad. It starts to become a whole much bigger life experience.
Oh yes. One of the things that we talked about that obviously drew us to kind of have you on the podcast as a guest, and from the work that you do, is your take on deep health. And I'd love for you to share what you feel deep health means to you, but just how important that then is, because I know that's kind of where you're talking from right now when you say it's not just about like these pockets of lifestyle areas that need to come into play. It's this collection of things that we need to pay attention to, which is deep health. So tell us more about that.
Yeah, so I mean, let me tell you a little bit brief overview of what deep health is, and then how it sort of applies into my coaching and therefore into people's lives. So deep health encompasses a broad spectrum of all of the things that make up our full picture of health. And first one is physical. So physical health, for me, I define it as feeling vibrant and energized and thriving. And then we have emotional, which is experiencing a full range of emotions and also appropriately expressing them. Then we have environmental health, and that is one that I think is underestimated. We might come back to that one. I'd love to delve more into that one. But environmental health is knowing that your everyday surroundings support your health and well-being. Mental health, which is like the characteristics of being alert, focused, competent, thoughtful, being able to make decisions. Two more, existential, which again is underestimated in some of today's society and culture, which is a sense of meaning and purpose in life. And that can be interpreted however you like. It doesn't mean necessarily religion or anything like that. It's, why do you get out of bed every day? What is your mission? What are you aiming to give the world? What's your impact? And then finally, relational, which is feeling connected and authentic with others, like feeling a sense of belonging. And for me, when I coach, the reason why this is so relevant is that quite often people enter in a specific area of that deep health. And quite often that's, for me, being the personal trainer and that people mainly know me for, is the physical health. And once they've engaged with that, then actually you start to realize there's more feeding into that underneath. So let me give you an example. Most of us know that how we feel can affect how we eat. And it can be a lot of people's like number one nutrition challenge. Well, if we were to just address the nutrition, the physical health, then that advice would look like eat more vegetables and drink more water. And if it was that simple, like we'd all be doing it. So I don't push the deep health, but when people say these things to me and come to me with these issues, in my mind, it's framed by this deep health framework. And so actually we start to dig a little deeper. It's not about eating vegetables. Why are you making those nutrition choices? And things like, so people have come to me saying things like, I eat when I'm stressed, or comfort eating, which, you know, given lockdown, a lot of people might be nodding along right now, like, yes, that's me. And I think with the framework of deep health, you can start to create a bit of space to make a different choice if you want to. And that's key. It's like, it's that personal choice. It's not an automatic behavior. Now you have greater space to choose something different. So something like the comfort eating, there's nothing wrong with eating for your emotions. It's not something that requires to be fixed. But with greater awareness, with this deep health, we can look at, well, is it the fact that it's available? Environmental health. Is there another tool that would actually like meet that need better? And yes, it might still be the packet of biscuits, but maybe it's the taking time out. Maybe it's a conversation with someone else, something that addresses that need in a deep way, so that it's not that you've eaten the packet of biscuits and still feel empty and dissatisfied. And that for me is why it's so crucial to have the deep health, because otherwise you're not tapping into, you're not able to access the long lasting change. You're just like sticking a plaster on there. Well, maybe only try to eat 2 biscuits.
It is so true what you said about that deep health. And the funny thing is, most people's obviously like version of health, as we already said, is physical. So everything they're going through, all the issues they're facing, they're always trying to eat better or to exercise harder or to start exercise and think it's going to fix everything. And like you said, like, you know that deep health is needed, but most people aren't aware that there is more to their health than just the physical. So it does take them a bit of time and to realize that and connect the fact that their stress, their emotional health, and mental health all comes into play when it comes to fixing, well, just dealing with the issues that they're facing. And trying to fix by going from diet to diet, or going from workout to workout, trying something different, trying the best workout there is or the best nutrition plan out there. It gives them a very short result, a temporary solution, and then they just go back to their same old habits again and get the same result, get the same issues coming up over and over again. So I think the more people become aware and understand what health actually is, and like I said, deep health is focusing on all those factors, especially what good one you said about environmental factors, most people forget about, is what's happening around you does have an impact on your decisions and how you actually show up and act in terms of your health. So I think the more people can become aware of that, it can be a massive game changer for people's lasting results, for the results they're looking for, can't it?
I think you both hit the nail on the head there of what I was about to say in terms of lasting change and get into that root cause. This is what we're all about at Wellness Theory as well, which is why we're so aligned, Caroline, with what you do, because get into the root cause and actually really nipping that in the bud and letting go of any emotional charge that's attached to things, or thought patterns that don't serve us anymore, or even decisions about boundaries and environments are also essential as well. And when we get to that root cause, that's the thing, that's the one thing that then helps to create that lasting effect and sense of lasting change. And if anybody's listening to this episode and has done the classic yo-yo diets and the classic go to the gym and stop at the gym, or the classic I'll start on Monday kind of attitude, it's going to really, really serve them and serve you listening to this to actually look at under the surface and look a bit deeper and see what else is going on, because very rarely is it just you need this exercise plan and this nutrition plan, like so rarely.
That's why I say it's surprising and emotional when you actually get into looking at it in this way. And I think also breaking it down to a process is quite important for me, because this idea of like your full picture of health and deep health can almost feel kind of so airy fairy, unattainable. How do I even start to get there? So maybe it's the chemistry teacher in me. I like to break it down. What does this look like as a process? How do I do it in my life? And so I'd love to go into a little bit of sort of how I'd approach that, if that sounds good.
Yeah, well, that's what we're going to ask you next, is like, how do you actually help people build strength in their body, mind, and spirit? How do you do it?
Yeah, so the process for me starts with what we've already touched on. So it starts with the deep why. And that looks like a focused couple of weeks where someone would come to me with a goal, and that goal tends to be something quite specific. So for instance, I'd say a large majority of my clients initially come to me with a weight loss goal because they're engaging with me from the sort of the physical aspect initially. And that's great to have such that clear focus. And the way that I then unpick that is a series of why questions. And to not like make too much of a joke of it, but you know the toddler that goes like, but why? But why?
That's me.
Yeah,
this is what I'm like still to this day.
So we do this process of actually uncovering why that person might want to. I'm going to use the example of losing weight, but it could be anything. It could be gaining weight. It could be like injury rehabilitation, whatever it is. And quite often it's not about the losing 10 pounds. So when you dig a little deeper, there's some underlying root cause that actually is motivating that goal. And when you start to dig, it becomes things like I'm concerned about my health long term and what its old age is going to be like. That's an example. Another one might be am I going to be able to be around and be present for my children? Other things might be well, currently I want to lose 10 pounds because the deep reason is I don't feel good enough as I am. And actually, when you can bring awareness to that and vocalize it and have that written down, it starts to put everything else in perspective. So every other change that you then like suggest and give options for is in this frame of the deep why, not about losing the 10 pounds that can be quite easily kind of ditched and moved away from, and it doesn't like surge someone long term. And then once we've identified that deep why, it's all habit based. I love using the habit based process. I think it's such a, I mean, I don't know if you like the term, but life hack to achieving amazing things in your life, to break it down to like 2 minutes. Because I've got some like cool catchphrases for you here. So why habits work so well, and that these 2 minutes, the 2-minute action then leads to motivation and then momentum. And so many people think they need to be inspired and motivated to start. I've got to dig out the willpower and let's use the willpower, when actually it's the other way around. Let's use that 2 minutes to build confidence and motivation and momentum, and then do the next 2 minutes, because 2 minutes for most people is achievable. It's
I love that.
not overwhelming.
What is the 2 minutes? Like, what do you suggest to somebody? So you've gone through, you've dug deep, you've found that emotional hotspot as to why they wanted to achieve this result. What does that 2 minutes look like for some of your clients? Because I would imagine it's slightly different for everybody.
Yeah. Let me give you a whole host of examples. So if you want to run, then a lot of people's goals are like, right, well, I'm going to go for 2 15-minute runs twice a week. And actually, that's huge. That is enormous compared to what they are doing. So the 2-minute action is put your trainers on and go out the door. And you can smile and you can walk back in again at that point. It might be having the glass of water straight away by your bed, and the first thing you do is you drink that water. It might be connecting to an affirmation. It might be doing 10 deep breaths. It might be doing 10 squats. Just that simple thing. It's like a vote towards that deep why, towards that person that you want to become, that best future self.
Nice. It's so important what you said about that why coming first, because like you said, there is like, it's hard to ditch something you've created an emotional connection to. And if you know that you're agreeing with a coach like you to do this 2-minute habit in order to get them moving to kind of gain momentum to get the results they're looking for, it's coming from a place that's deep. Like you said, as cliche as that sounds and what we've been saying, like it's so easy for somebody to then understand the real reason why they're doing it. They're not doing it because they think they should, they're doing it because there's an emotional connection to it, aren't they?
Yeah. And then absolutely, I completely agree with you. And the other thing as well is that I feel a habit-based approach, it starts to frame things in terms of feedback and not failure, because it's so small, and you put it in this perspective of, let's try this out. Does it make us feel better? Well, was it unhelpful? And therefore, it's like this continual learning process of figuring out what works for you, rather than adopting like someone else's morning routine or someone else's diet. This little habit-based approach is like, well, this is another piece of feedback. This is another interesting piece of information about myself. And then for that person can start to build up something that is theirs. It's not someone else's. It's their life and their body and their choices.
For sure, and like exactly what you said was what we reiterate so many times to people who ask for help, is there is no one size fits all. You are individual. Like everyone asks, oh, this is happening, what do I do? Okay, without actually knowing you, knowing who you are, what you do, all these things about you, we can only give you generic advice that may or may not work. To understand you as a person, to be able to actually give you advice and guidance that's actually going to work for you, we need to know about you, we need to spend time with you, we need to be able to see what works and what doesn't, and that does take time. And that's what a lot of people don't want to hear initially. They want something, I've got this problem, give me something that's going to fix it now. But it doesn't work like that. And that's why I think the more people become aware of that and they start to think, okay, I'm an individual and I can't just take any random advice or program or plan that I see on the internet or someone gives me. I've got to really start to think about what actually works for me. And then I think all these fads will start to kind of drop off.
A good coach will always ask for that feedback. They will always ask, well, how did it feel for you? Right? Like you just said quite rightly, that feedback is essential. And that's quite rightly what John just said there about, you know, people going and taking an off-the-shelf program. It just doesn't work because there's no space in there to adapt based on the feedback that you're getting. And you're so right, like feedback over failure, absolutely 100% of the way, because so many people, they get stuck in this almost stress loop and a cycle of, oh, I tried, I failed again. Now that means I can't be consistent. Now they believe they can't be consistent. Now they think, okay, well, there's no point then. Why don't I just eat whatever I want and I'll just kind of see what happens? And this loop. And then one day they get this idea, oh no, I'll start again. I'll try again because this time I'm feeling a bit more motivated, and it just goes on and on, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's still helpful, I think, to recognize that pain point. A lot of people reach out for help when they feel that pain point, and that is short-term pain. And if you are in that place, like, that is an utterly valid feeling. I completely understand why you're searching for a quick fix, because we want that pain to go away. And I think just knowing that you have the option to not just fix the short-term pain is also a message I'd really like to tell people. Like, yes, you can get the short-term fix, but have you considered, yes, the short-term fix, but something that's going to actually help you longer than that? But I don't think anyone's right or wrong in like reaching for whatever methods they do. That pain exists because, you know, you wanting that change. So don't invalidate whatever that is, you know, wherever you are right now.
Definitely, because we've got to understand is that we're motivated by pain and by pleasure, and pain is usually what gets us started, right? That's what lights us up, that's what sparks us to go and search for these solutions. The thing that keeps you going and creates the lasting change is when you're moving towards pleasure. If we're constantly trying to move away from pain, we'll forever be focused on that pain and moving back towards it all the time. So it's absolutely adamant for people to understand it's okay if pain has got you triggered and got you sparked up and psyched for it, but that deeper approach, that lasting change approach, must come from that mental shift and that focus. But it sounds like obviously your approach there with the habits specifically helps them to do that. What happens next after the habits in your process?
So, I mean, I wouldn't say there's necessarily an end point to that. Like, because there's so many aspects of deep health. For instance, I've had people who I've now coached for years. And what happens is they'll pick an initial kind of area to work on. They'll work on a set of habits. And then what I try and emphasize and put this perspective is that your life comes in seasons. And therefore, at some point, your goals will shift. That's fine. It doesn't mean that the ones you had initially were like wrong. It doesn't mean you succeeded or failed at them even. And then you'll shift into another area. And then perhaps at another point in your life, you then shift again. And so quite often I find this like cyclical nature where we come back to different aspects, and it's almost like people are ready when they come back to it to dive a bit deeper, they've had some more experience, some more coaching, some more habits, and therefore actually people tend to stick around a long time with me because there's so much to explore and so many different directions, and the way that you perhaps coach sleep when you start might be different from coaching someone in sleep like 2 months or 2 years down the line.
Yeah, definitely. It always will. We're always growing, right? We believe in the Kaizen approach of continuous improvement, 1% every day, and integrating all those areas as one can be vitally important as well, though, because one of the things that I worked with a lot of clients on is this idea that they're feeling disconnected in different areas of their lives as well, and that can sometimes come from too much segregation. I completely support where you're coming from with people focusing on certain areas, because that's human nature, that's what we do, like that's totally normal, and we need support with that. But sometimes I think it's worth mentioning that sometimes that can actually be a bit of a blind spot for anyone listening that might just trying to be going all in on one area. And I think we kind of spoke about this before we started hitting record today, was just how, you know, we have people existing in mental health space, mental health for men, mental health for women. Then we have physical health for men, for women, for this age group, that age group. And things, it's great that there's so many niches and so many experts helping in those areas. It's fantastic and I absolutely love it. But sometimes it can be a problem because some areas can often be neglected. In your experience, Caroline, like what is the most neglected area when it comes to deep health?
Okay, so I mean, I kind of mentioned, so I said we were going to come back to it. I think in the context of health and fitness, it's environmental.
Yeah.
Because, and I'm going to approach this from a couple of different aspects as well, because there's literally the objects we surround ourselves with, and then there's the less tangible things that we surround ourselves with. So to start off with, I've got a wonderful quote. I don't know if you've heard of someone called James Clear, but this just sums up environmental health for me, and that we don't rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems. And so if you've got like the cookies out on the counter and you're working towards, say, like a more nutritious, healthy eating goal, then that plate of cookies, if they're there, they're going to get eaten. Whereas if you just make that little gateway decision of let's put the apples there instead, then that environment is now supporting you towards that goal that you've decided on. And I think we underestimate that entirely. Like your willpower is finite. Definitely, especially in a highly stressed life where we're bombarded by notifications and having to make micro decisions all the time. You don't fail if your willpower gives out. Absolutely not. Instead, it should be a case of, well, how can we minimize those micro stresses and maximize the environment for the choices that we actually want to make? And so an instance for this in my life is like, obviously, you know, because we've chatted about it before, but I'm achieving a lot at the moment, having to cope with a lot, do a lot. I've got my full-time chemistry job, I've got my one-to-one clients, and I've got my classes and a house renovation. And so environmental health is a big one for me, because if that doesn't happen, things are going to fall apart. They absolutely are. So my food prep has to happen in a couple of hours on a Sunday, and that is my food for Monday to Friday. But if I didn't sort that environmental thing out, then what I'd put into my body Monday to Friday would probably be, for me, pretty horrific in terms of the impact on my energy and my ability to do the things that I want to do. So that is therefore a non-negotiable for me, to sort that environmental trigger out, because then I don't have to think about what I'm going to eat Monday to Friday. It's there, it's nutritious. And therefore, the power of the environment, I think, is one that people underestimate, the physical triggers.
I'd agree with that completely. Sure. I mean, that was our thing, wasn't it? When we were still working full-time corporate and kind of setting up everything that we now do, with that, it was our jam is food prep, but it was like always, wasn't it, like without fail. Fortunately now we're in a slightly different environment and we don't necessarily have to prep that intensely, like for each meal. We've got the time and luxury to be able to do that now, but in the past it wasn't always like that. It was so many stresses, flying to different countries all the time, delivering different trainings in the corporate fitness space, and it was intense. And I just remember those times of like being in airports and the food options around you are pretty poor, especially in the GCC, even more so. And it makes a massive difference. And if you don't take into account those boundaries that need to be put in place, what needs to be in your boundary and outside of your boundary, is essential, absolutely essential. Another interesting kind of spin on environmental health is, because becoming a lot more into people's awareness now, is things like toxins, things like your EMFs coming from your mobile phones, and having your phones next to your bed and things like that. Like, that's a massive gap right now that people aren't aware enough of, that are really affecting people's health and well-being. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I completely agree there. I think it's barely on some people's radar even. And again, I think it's not headline news at the moment, is it? It's not kind of like, it's not being pushed in people's faces. And I don't mean that negatively, but sometimes that, you know, like that social media push of this is now an issue gets more people like switched onto it, and things like that. I would say also, though, for a lot of people that I work with, we look at what the needle movers are. And therefore, I wouldn't necessarily suggest that someone needs to get hung up on it unless they've explored it and actually it's a needle mover for them.
Yeah, 100%.
You don't have to focus on making everything perfect in every single area. But absolutely, I think for some people that is going to be crucial.
Yeah, I agree completely, because we have to focus on the needle movers, definitely, because there's only a certain number of things you can focus on at once without going crazy. But the thing is, like, sometimes people overlook, like, some people might have issues with their hormone health and not realize how shop bought deodorant is affecting their hormonal responses and things like that. So that's just another area for any listeners to think about, right? It's to start opening their minds to the environmental side of health, absolutely, in terms of preparation and all of that side of it, but also the untapped areas that could be a needle mover for them that maybe they haven't considered yet.
Yeah, definitely. The same when it comes to food as well. You look at nutritious, healthy foods, fruits and vegetables. A lot of supermarkets are actually they still got a thin layer of pesticides or chemicals that are attached to them. And they just say something simple as running them under warm water for a certain amount of time can help to get rid of that before eating it. And something that small, even if it's just a tiny little bit, can have a big effect internally on the body. So I think just having that awareness as well about even the so-called healthy foods in supermarkets can carry some hidden.
Yeah.
And by just taking simple actions like just washing your food before you eat it, like fresh vegetables, and that can make a big difference to what actually goes into your body.
Yeah, and I think also appreciating that things like that are a lot more complicated than they seem. So like, yes, the scientific research has been done on specific chemicals, specific pesticides, this is safe. But what we don't know very much about is if you put a cocktail, even in tiny amounts, by cocktail I just mean a mixture of those different chemicals into the body, they all interplay off each other. And that's why things like eating an apple or a pepper contain potentially more nutritious benefit than taking the supplements on their own, because the chemicals interact in the body and affect the absorption. So I'd utterly echo that actually it's not a case of like the specific ingredient, but it's being aware of yourself as a biochemical system that's so insanely complicated, that actually just by simply washing, you're sort of negating stuff that you don't even know about. The chemistry of all of those different things is kind of taken care of by washing, rather than just thinking I'm removing that chemical.
Yeah,
100%.
Sure.
Listen, another thing that's so important for you, and I think you touched on it earlier, where you said a lot of people see you obviously as a trainer in terms of their entry point into deep health with you, and that you focus heavily on the movement side of things in what you do. So why is that such an important element to what you do?
I love this question. Like, thank you so much for asking it. And movement, I think, again, was something in my life that probably echoes the journey of my clients. So I also came really to the whole health, fitness and wellness space through starting moving. And I think it's so crucial because it can be a gateway. And it can be a gateway into other change, and it can be a gateway into the other aspects of deep health and into the mindset. And movement is such a game changer because it's not theoretical. It's an experience that your mind and your body go through. So movement for me is a way of living your way to the answer. You know, you can go through the pros and cons of everything until you're utterly confused, or you could pick up a barbell and see if you can or can't do it. And that is a way of living your way to the answer. And it also, I think, movement for me, it starts to normalize things and work on mindset that society doesn't give us. So for instance, like, it normalizes failure. Like, how many times in our lives have we been told that we pass, or that we fail, or that we succeed or we don't succeed, when actually, like, things like yoga, dancing and weightlifting, failure is going to happen, like, all the time, multiple times a session, and realizing that that's okay, because then when we do the habit-based stuff, you've got that context of, well, I'm going to fail, and that is part of the process. You learn about it, and that links into the science as well. So I don't know if you've heard of something called growth mindset, this idea that, you know, like, our traits, our personality, our intelligence is not fixed. You can improve all of those things. And it's something that I think led me away from the chemistry teaching and into the health and fitness area, because it's so hard to educate a teenager on growth mindset when they're given like an A, a B, a C, a D. Whereas you give someone a barbell and they can't do it 1 week and then they can do it again in 6 weeks' time. That experience of doing that with someone, seeing them light up of suddenly being able to do something they couldn't do before, for me embodies this growth mindset. Absolutely. And it therefore leads into so many interesting conversations about stress and success and failure and everything else. So it's
for sure, like, I completely agree with what you're saying. And I think one thing for anyone listening to understand is to think about what we like to call mindful movements, because like movement, everyone moves. The problem is a lot of people are so disconnected from their bodies, they're not actually sure what's going on when they do move. They're not actually sure if their body's responding well to what they're feeling, what they're supposed to be feeling. So I think moving more mindfully and connecting with the feelings and experiences your body's going through is important to make sure those movements you're doing are right for you, but also getting the result that you want. Because I remember many times in the past where I used to kill myself in the gym for hours a day, like 6-7 days a week, barely getting a result. Everything just so hard. It was like, it shouldn't be this hard. That's because I wasn't listening to what my body was telling me. And I had the same issue with clients a long time ago, is why aren't they getting the result they want fast enough? Because what they were doing was disconnected from what they were feeling. And when they start to bring that connection together and thinking, okay, this isn't working for me, my body's telling me no, we need to change it up, try something different, find an alternative that your body does respond to, then things become more effortless. You can still push yourself hard, you can still get a really good workout, but you feel great, you feel energized, and you're getting the result in half the time because your body is actually responding well to what you're doing, because you're actually connected with it. What are your kind of thoughts around that side of it?
Oh my days, I completely feel that. Completely resonates with me. And it's probably something that I felt the most when I started a yoga practice. Yes, I attended the gym before, but I think, as you say, that there's a certain amount of connection, there's a certain amount of awareness that you build, like, from moving and that gym practice. But I remember a few months into my yoga practice and I was like, oh my God, I can feel my body. And it was like this whole myriad of emotions and sensations and feelings that I felt like I'd never accessed before. I was like, I can feel the sensation of wiggling my fingers, and you feel just like your stomach more. And a lot of people that have a stress and anxiety or mental health problems, it's all linked into the stomach and the digestion. And so that for me is also a big one. Like, how can you increase the sensations of what does your stomach feel like? How do you feel grounded? And the different sensations in your body. So I would love people to step a little bit away from the high intensity like HIIT, especially when we've been at home in lockdown. Amazing that people are moving, like primarily, yes, if you are moving and you've been doing HIITs, well done you. But I'd also love people to consider the stress of that, because movement is a stressor. You know, you're using your muscles and your body's going to have to repair from that. And I think there becomes a limit to throwing yourself around how much good you can necessarily do. Let's slow things down.
Definitely.
Let's go back to the basics of like a walk.
Yeah.
And breathe the fresh air and notice how your body changes during that walk and the different sensations it gives you. So I'd love for people to put their movement more in the context of feeling it and considering the overall stress in their lives and the different sensations that it opens up for them. Yes, definitely.
Definitely. Yeah, and it's like you said, the higher the intensity, the higher the stress, and the longer that is on for, it can cause issues, especially if you're already starting your workout in a stressed state anyway. But a lot of people have that misconception that the harder they work, the better the result they get. So the more they push themselves, the higher the intensity, the better the result. And that's not always the case. If you're an Olympic athlete or you're a competitor, you've got to challenge yourself. But for the average person who are looking to improve their health, lose a bit of weight, maybe gain a bit of weight, you don't have to kill yourself every day or even a few times a week. It should be more mindful of what you're doing and finding what works for you. That has a big impact on your results. So what would you say to someone listening who maybe is in that intensity mindset, thinking, I'm not getting the result I want, so I've got to do more and push harder? So what would you say to them to kind of try and help them see a different perspective and slow things down and actually try and connect with themselves more?
Yeah, first of all, I'd say come with understanding to where you are now. You're approaching that exercise because it is a method and a tool that has served you in the past. That high intensity and that drive has got you through some tough stuff. And so it's only natural that you're bringing that approach into your exercise. It's not something that's wrong. It's something that we should honor and realize that actually our body and our brain and our nervous system have been trying to help us out by employing that tool. And then secondly, I'd say slow down. As simple as that sounds, if you're approaching a set of squats, bring in accounts, slow it down and just notice what it feels like. It doesn't have to be a case of, right, I want you to change everything about your exercise, ditch your high intensity, but try something slow. And how does it feel? And use that as feedback to then start to change the next thing and then potentially the next thing. And I think also a lot of high stress, high achieving individuals, that is definitely the approach that they come to. I've got a lot of clients that are highly stressed and want to give themselves more stress in their workout. So it's constantly a reminder. And actually, this is maybe my biggest piece of advice: breathe.
Yeah.
Notice your breath. Are you hyperventilating? Because if you are, you're working too hard.
Exactly.
You see this with runners a lot as well. Most runners out, again, amazing for going out running. Go you, don't give that up. But if you're running at a pace where you can't hold a conversation, it's too high intensity. You don't need to be doing high intensity exercise. I think this has come from some of the studies that have said high intensity interval training, you can get fitter in the least amount of time possible. But that's in a very isolated context where maybe that person isn't under a lot of stress. If you have a high stress job, if you have kids, if you're juggling a lot of things, my advice generally is don't do high intensity. You don't have to do it. And that's also tempered with a little bit of like, I know people enjoy getting sweaty to feel good. There's a balance. There's definitely a balance. And usually that high intensity is a lot less than you think it needs to be.
And that goes back to what we were saying earlier about is listening to that feedback, because high intensity, if you are doing it as part of a quality pre-programmed structure, then it's going to be healthy for you and you're probably getting good feedback and you're getting the results that you want. But the chances are, because it's become so mainstream and it's been a bit of a trend, you know, it's something there's a lot of people doing it that maybe is not helpful for. So it's not that it doesn't ever work, obviously, it's just that it needs to work in the right context, like you quite rightly said there. For me, it was the same. Like, I always used to be like stressed, and then I'd try and like keep up almost with everybody else because of the kind of environment, going back to what we said earlier, that I was in. And it just wasn't conducive for my own personal results, for my mental health, for my emotional, none of it. It just wasn't serving at all. And now, interestingly enough, on our Stressful to Stress-Free Kickstarter program that we run, for people that are just like super stressed out and want just to almost overcome the biggest hurdles within as little as 5 days, we teach them how to do exactly that, how to come into awareness of their own bodies. We teach them how to breathe, how to connect, how to feel what's going on, how to understand how you're thinking and identifying with your experience when it comes to your wellness, when it comes to your stress, when it comes to your life, you know, like, because it's so imperative that people do zoom out and then zoom back in such a deep way and feel what they're doing. So, Caroline, I'm curious to ask you, like, because we could talk for hours on all of this, for sure, and go in so many different directions. You've got the mic, you know, you've got an audience listening. What's the one thing that you wish that everybody knew about themselves?
Wish everyone knew about themselves. You are enough. And I do want to put that in context as well, because I think it sits at the root of our humanity. I think this idea of we strive because we don't feel good enough, and therefore I wish everyone knew just how good they are, exactly the way they are, what they do or don't do, what they experience or don't experience. You are enough. Because then from that place of knowing that, all of the amazing things can happen. Like, if you come from a place of I am enough, then the healthy food choices, they're not a struggle. They're naturally what you gravitate towards. And the same with movement, and the same with meditation. And the way that this looks like in my life, it's come from my yoga practice. So yoga is you may have heard the quote, it's a journey from the self to the self, through the self. And you start to realize that actually your true self is happy, peaceful, joyful, and completely enough, exactly the way it is. And I'd like to thread the theme of kindness in there as well. Because you come from a place of I am enough, that looks like immense amount of kindness to yourself, and therefore then propagated out to others. And with kind of some of the things I've talked about, like the habits and the food prep and stuff like that, because I'm trying to do so much in my life, it can look like from the outside that that's just immense amounts of self-discipline, but it's not. From the inside, it comes from a place of I'm looking after my future self, and that is from a place of kindness, because I am enough. No matter how much I like stumble over my words or put something stupid out on social media or make mistakes and fail and look like an utter like idiot, that is still enough. And self-discipline without kindness is just punishment. So
True.
Start from the place of I am enough. And as I said, yoga for me has been a big tool for that journey.
Amazing.
Awesome.
Beautifully put.
Definitely. So Caroline, we've spoken a lot about habits, obviously, in this episode today. So I want to kind of touch on your life in the last 5 years. So what do you feel has been either maybe one, like a new belief, a new behavior or habit that has most improved your life in the last 5 years?
Can I pick two? Okay, so the first one is breathwork and meditation. And some people may find that entirely off-putting. So maybe we can frame that as like a silence practice, whether that's writing, meditating, breathing. But kind of the same way as we've been talking about like a mind-body connection, I feel a lot of that stems from the breath and the way that we experience life, the way we experience stress, happiness, joy. It's all linked into the breath. So doing regular breath work has been incredibly grounding, and also, yeah, a big way to manage stress. It's changed a lot for me, learning how to manipulate that. Yeah. And then my second one is more of a mindset thing. So because, and I think a lot of people listening are going to resonate with this, like we try and do a lot, we always try and do more, be more. And I lived in this story of like, I'm so busy, guys, I'm literally so busy, I'm so sorry, but you just don't appreciate how busy I am. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but a big game changer for me, which is a journey to this day that I work on to this day, is actually I get to take ownership of that stress and my priorities, and my life looks the way it does because of my choices. And that might sound simple, but it shifted so much. I stopped living in this I am so busy mindset, and it felt like once I took ownership, all of the things that I wanted to do I could still do, but without being stressed out of my mind. There became this sense of being able to do it with flow and grace and ease, as opposed to striving and pushing. So taking ownership for my stress, my priorities, my life, and breathing.
Awesome.
They're two things that we talk about all the time.
I love breath work.
I'm so happy that our audience are getting to hear somebody else say that, because it's so powerful. Like just owning what's going on in your world is essential. If anyone listening to this still answers the question, how are you, with I'm busy, like there's some work to be done, right, when it comes to that owning and mindset of it as well. It's like, it's understandable that you feel busy. We live in a busy world.
And I'd also say it was a painful place to get. It was a painful journey to get to that point. So there was struggle in there. So if you are someone who's going through that, like, I absolutely feel you. It is a hard thing to realize that you can take ownership, because it puts it all on you, doesn't it? That's an incredibly uncomfortable place to be. And all I can say is the other side of the fence of taking that ownership, that responsibility, is so much worth it than that initial pain of stepping into I'm responsible.
Definitely. And obviously I just want to touch on your on the breath that you mentioned as one of your habits. And it's funny, the amount of years we've been in the industry, every year they always bring out like the top like 10 or 20 trends of that year in the health and fitness industry, and it's always like gadgets and classes and yoga and all this stuff. In 2021, in the top 5, breathwork was in there. For this year, breathwork was actually in the top, in the trending health and fitness kind of things going on. So far, well, yeah, I said 2021 is like what's becoming more popular, and that's never been in the list in all the years you've been in the industry. And it shows that it is becoming the forefront of people's minds now, is how important something they've always had from the day they were born, and how much it can influence everything, every single system in your body, if you know how to use it right, the correct way. So it's really good to see that people are starting to that's starting to become a big focus now in kind of in the world of health and wellness, which is awesome, because it does make such a big impact on every single area of your life.
I mean, I could probably do a whole nother episode on breath, but if anyone really wants to delve into, I don't know if a quick recommendation if someone's interested or intrigued by the breathing. The book Breathe by James Nestor is a fantastic, like pretty life-changing read when it comes to seeing your breath in your life.
Listen, I definitely echo that. I mean, John's like the breath king when it comes to wellness theory.
Every breath book.
He's consumed them all about 100 times, and he practices like religiously. Something I now practice religiously, really as a result of his enthusiasm for it as well. And it really is game changing on so many levels. Going back to how we kind of started the episode on the deep health level, you know, all of those factors that you mentioned there, environmental, mental, emotional, and so on, like all of them combined can be improved through breath. It's the one thing everybody has access to. It's free. All it takes is a little basic understanding, and you can already start to leverage it. When, like you quite said there, quite rightly, it's like manipulating it. You've learned to manipulate it now to serve you in the ways you want to. That's more advanced. Like, you don't even need to have to learn to manipulate it in order to be able to experience the benefits. Just stopping and breathing in for 5, out for 5, in through the nose, out through the mouth.
Just become conscious
once a day. Yeah, exactly.
I'm conscious of your breathing, and it makes a world of difference.
It's enough to start there, and then build upon that and see what differences you feel and what you notice. So yeah, I'm so happy that you raised that as one of your things.
Absolutely echo that. Like, your breathing is going to change a ton of health markers, the quality of your sleep, how you can access like your emotions and your ability. Like, it's been used in training some Olympic teams, like breath work as well. I think it was a swim team potentially, and a running team as well. So it's been implemented in some amazing ways. And then also it's been implemented in certain health conditions as well, to essentially, like as I said, you can delve into it in the book Breathe by James Nestor, but people were literally going from bedbound to walking again just from being able to access their breath. Like, how mind-boggling is that? But I'd echo you as well. Like, it doesn't need to be complicated. I love resonance breathing in either for a count of 4 or 5 and out for a count of 4 or 5. You can literally OD on that. There's no like too much that you can do with that type of breath, and I think it's fantastic.
It literally is such a resourceful space. When you're doing that coherence breathing, it literally creates coherence between the heart and the mind and the body, and it allows that synchronicity to work in your favor in any area of your life. So yeah, inside the body, but also in all those life areas as well. You'll see it project out, and you'll start to see a ripple effect of just a simple breathing pattern. Just interesting you said there about like the incredible things that can happen with breath. That was like one of the fundamentals of what cured your chronic pain. That's the reason I started doing it in the first place, because of seeing these stories, these studies done on people who've been able to overcome serious illnesses through the way they breathe and visualize. And that's when I started after trying everything possible I could find in the physical world to fix my chronic back pain. I just tried to obviously control and be more conscious of my breathing and try some different breathing techniques. And literally within 2 weeks of trying it consistently every day, the chronic back pain I had for 4 years disappeared completely. And it was like, okay, yep, there's definitely something in this breathing thing. And now it's something I do religiously every single day, because like I focus consciously breathing, because it is so powerful.
Yeah, it's part of your identity. It's stuck.
Yeah,
exactly. That's going right full circle to how we started. If anyone's listening to this, explore what's going on with how you're identifying with yourself. Explore the different deep health areas that Caroline shared with us. Start to actually think about, is there any area that needs a bit more attention for you? And start small, start basic, understand why, build on the habits.
Realizing that comes in seasons.
Yeah.
And that reframes this idea of success and failure entirely.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. So Caroline, where can people find you if they want to come and learn more?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me under the Plan Harrogate. So Harrogate is my location. I'm called the Plan because life's better with a plan. So I'm under on Facebook at the Plan Harrogate, Instagram at the Plan Harrogate, and then website theplanharrogate.com as well. I'd love to get involved with as many of you. Hear your feedback from this, ask your questions. That'd be really cool.
Awesome. Listen, it's been incredible to have you. Really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show. I think everybody's going to love you. And yeah, they should go check you out now.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.